Hi, Joe Palmer here. It's Thursday, September 14th, and yesterday and today the government came out and released the CPI and PPI figures. What those are simply are the consumer price index and the producer price indexes, and showing what they're expecting for inflation, what's going on with the economy and everything else. And things, in my opinion, don't look that great. I had a few economic courses in college, and you don't have to be a wizard to figure out that we are in serious economic trouble. And I started reflecting on where we were concerning inflation, looking back on nations that had a really long history and were powerful, what have you. And I came upon the Roman Empire, of all things, and something that doesn't seem to be addressed in a lot of books. And there have been over 200 books and things written on the fall of the Roman Empire, but not a lot of them address the economic issues, which, again, economists way back in the early 100 BC, AD, I don't use CE, Common Era, and all that. I still believe in before Christ and Anno Domini after. But anyway, economics was not something that was studied that much. But if we look back, we can see where inflation, in my opinion, is one of the greatest reasons for the fall of the Roman Empire. And just a real quick history on it. They when they started out, they had this coin. It was called make sure I get it right, the denarius, and it was made of something like 95% silver. Anyway, long story short, as time progressed in the development of the empire and the government of the Roman Empire, typically they were Caesars, emperors, they wanted to build new roads. They wanted to build coliseums. They wanted to have entertainment for the people. They wanted to expand their military. They had a lot of things they wanted to do. And the problem with the existing denarius was that it had so much silver in it that they didn't produce that much of the coin. So it wasn't enough to go around. So some smart politicians said, well, you know what, let's start mixing some other metals in there. And eventually they started adding different compounds, raw materials into the coin, and it devalued the actual value of that coin. But they had a lot more of them, and they would mint those coins, M-I-N-T, they would mint those coins, and they had thousands and thousands, millions of them. Is that any different than what we do today? What the government does today? They don't call it minting, they call it printing. And how many trillions of dollars are printed? Think about that. Now, the other comparison that I would like to draw between the denarius and the dollar is that when you have more coins out there, their value begins to deteriorate. And it's the same thing with the dollar. The more dollars you produce and not providing anything, the less value it is. Since 1972, and I double-checked this with a number of sources, since 1972 to 2022, which is only 50 years, okay, the dollar has decreased 86%. Some will say 85, 86, but let's just say 86%. That means, in simple buying terms, a dollar that you had earned in 1972 in 2022 was only worth 14 cents. 14 cents. And that's a hard fact. I don't care what your political ilk is. I don't care what you think about the government printing money or anything else. That's a hard, cold fact. Your buying power has gone down. Okay, so what happens? You've got to make more money to pay for a devalued currency. What came out in the reports of yesterday and today is that the effects of inflation, which is starting to tick up a bit, will not be felt for at least another 2 or 3 months. And the long term is that it's going to be a further devaluation of the dollar. Inflation eats away at your buying capability. We all know that. They said that retail sales were up last year. Dollar-wise, yeah, they were up, but people were only buying the same things they were buying the month before, except it was at a higher price. You got to look at these numbers and figure out what's really going on in the country. So getting back to the Roman Empire, they started printing all these coins, but they didn't have anything to back the currency up. The Roman Empire had no material wealth. Everything they got was from their provincial areas that they had captured, and they bled them dry. They ran out of raw materials as well. So what did the Romans have to back up their denarii? Nothing. They had no value. Is it that the same thing that happened in the United States? I mean, Nixon took the U.S. off the gold standard back in the 70s. You know, I'm not going to get into all the ramifications of that. But at the time, the United States was a manufacturing nation. At the time, we had reserves. At the time, we were developing new technologies. We were going to the moon. We were going into outer space. We were sending up satellites that would last for 50, 60 years, still sending back information. Okay, we don't do that anymore. Today, again, looking at these reports, almost 2/3 of our national economy is built on services. That means hotels, restaurants, things of that nature. We are no longer a manufacturing nation. And I'm so sick of these politicians on both sides of the aisle saying we're going to bring back these jobs. They've had decades to do it, and they haven't done it. They still farm them out offshore. And this is the other thing that happened to the Romans. The Roman economy, which when it started off as small little Rome, built basically around the city of Rome, the 7 hills, they were a manufacturing, aggressive, technology developing oriented kind of a country. The further they expanded, the more slavery became part of their culture, until at the very end, they were not manufacturing themselves. They relied on their slaves. Okay? And I'm not saying that we've got slavery in the United States, but where are all these illegal immigrants going? Are they going into high-paying jobs? No. They are going to be the low-income wagers that we want to maintain so that we can keep our standard of living, which is going to decrease. It's going to go downhill. So anyway, at the end of the day, Roman Empire just flat out failed. Yeah, they had a lot of problems. They went into tribalism. They had far-flung provinces. They had military ventures that they didn't fare too well at. They were invaded by the Huns, the Gauls, people from the east. They had a lot of other things that went wrong. But I think to negate or to not consider how their government, basically the emperors, which, again, you want to talk about the government? Their government became bloated. They were loaded with bureaucrats. And you know what they started doing? As a final note, it just came to mind. They started taxing. They tax their population more and more and more because they need their government needed more and more money to support the projects that they wanted to do. Projects, quite frankly, that were of little value to the general population. But it made the politicians feel good. So I want you just to think about it for a minute. And you know, we've got these people in Washington, and I'll tell you, I'm fed up with them all. They talk about the economy, they talk about things they're going to do, and yet it doesn't change. It doesn't change. Mark my words, when the next big spending bill comes along, your congressman is going to have some kind of special project for a library that's going to cost $150,000. He's going to do something else to build a parking garage for somebody that doesn't need a parking garage. They're going to do a road improvement for a road that doesn't need a road improvement. They're going to spend money just because they're going to spend money. Look at the deficit. Look at where we're spending our money. All they're doing is printing more. Is the United States the same as the Roman Empire? You know, when you start to think about it, it could be true. Anyway, that's my sad note, and it is a sad note to see how this country, in my lifetime, I was born in 1947. I know I'm an old guy, okay? I was born in 1947, and I saw, and I lived through the 50s. I remember the 50s. I remember the 60s and the 70s and the 80s and 90s and where we are now. And I got to tell you, those of you that are in the same generation as I, you know how far downhill this country has gone. And it's no longer are we approaching the slippery slope. In my opinion, we're on it. So, again, I do wish you have a good day. I hope you subscribe to my channel. I got some other things that I've started doing some research on that I'm going to talk about further. And one of them is moving overseas. So please subscribe to the channel. Hope you have a good day. I hope that you stay well. God bless.